Hello, welcome again to Bible Studies. We're continuing in John 16 and really coming to the end of the point where Jesus he's been laying out what's going to come. He's been chatting with the disciples and really bringing, I can't say a depth of understanding, but he's been bringing a depth of teaching that even at this point they may not understand, but he's laying things out for them so that when stuff has happened, when Jesus has died, when he's resurrected, that they'll have a really good understanding of what's going on. So Jesus has finished that time, and you know, it's interesting. Jesus just said, he said in verse 25, "I'm speaking figuratively," and then the disciples say to Jesus in verse 29, chapter 16, he says, "Now you're speaking clearly without figures of speech." So I don't know when that switched, but and they said, "Now we can see that you know all things and you do not need to have anyone ask you questions. This makes us believe you come from God." And I'm not quite sure. To me, it almost feels like the disciples have gone through to a point where they're like, "We've had enough of this conversation. We don't have a clue what's going on." And they've just given a phrase. I might be harsh on the disciples, but you know how sometimes you just get, you've so lost what's going on. It's like you end up closing down the subject, and you wonder if that's where the disciples got to. Um, and Jesus' reply was, "Do you now believe?" It's almost like Jesus knows they're not going to get it, but they're doing their best, and they're they're doing the best to understand. They're doing the best to follow, yeah, and all that. So anyway, we come to verse 32, and I want to bring this summary for us today. It says this: "A time is coming, and in fact has come, when you will scatter." So Jesus has been talking up to this point about a time that is coming. It's very soon, but he's been laying out what's going to happen, and through his death, through his resurrection. And here he shifts the narrative. He shifts what's going on. He says, "A time is coming, in fact has come." He shifts it to say, we are now in this time. It's like it's a declaration. It's changed, and he tells them that in this season they will be scattered to their own home. We often focus on the comments of Peter, and Peter saying, "I won't deny you," and yet he did. But the reality is that all the disciples were scattered. None of them. Peter was the one that stayed longer than them, and Peter was the one that spoke up. So Peter became the one that Jesus directed. He said to, but they were all going to be scattered, each to their own home. It's like the arrest of Jesus just turned their world upside down, inside out. And though they'd had all this teaching, though they'd known what Jesus was saying, even so, they they just didn't have that frame of reference. They weren't able to, um, you know, work that through in their heads. But we have to remember this was something that had to happen. Jesus had to be abandoned on earth. He had to be isolated on earth. If he wasn't, then he wouldn't have been able to cover on the cross the areas of abandonment and isolation that people face. So Jesus went through it. Why? He went through it so that you and me, where we face any of these things, there's a way through. So the disciples scattered. Jesus was on his own. He's on his own to deal with, you know, the roots of loneliness and isolation. He's there to help us have a way through when those things hit. Then he says something really important. He's basically said, "You lot are gone, but I'm not alone, for my Father is with me." And he's coming down to the very core in that moment. He goes to the cross, the very core of who he is, his relationship with his Father. So I know the Father is with me. And from that place, he says, so this journey of the cross, the resurrection, with all its turmoil, Father was with him. He says this, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. Jesus is laying out this journey for the disciples, and it's written for us, but it's a journey that's designed and laid out to bring peace to our heart. Even today, reading this is designed to bring peace to our hearts. Yeah, we know the end, we know the story, but like even today, there's a continuation of the story. The continuation being that one day the Father will send Jesus back. One day he will return. Yeah, and we're living still in that middle ground. We're living in a ground where there's been a fulfillment of the cross and the resurrection, but there's not a fulfillment of Jesus coming back. So in reading this, is a reminder God's in charge, and there's a reminder that peace is available for us as we walk on earth. He goes on, he says to the disciples, I've told you these things so you might be at peace. But more than that, he said, there will be trouble in this world, but take heart. Take heart. Why? Because I have overcome this world. Just grab that little bit of scripture there. I just want to. There's various little variations on this. See if I can. I can't pick them up. Why does everything move when you're trying not to have it move? Sorry, I've lost my space here. There we are. We're back again. Boop. There we are. Yeah, so Jesus, he says, take heart. I have overcome the world. Other translations, be of good cheer because I have overcome. Literally, that word means to conquer, to get victory. In other words, everything that the disciples face, this journey to the cross is about bringing the victory. Not just, if you like, it's a victory that we enjoy the benefits of. And the benefits of that victory are not just earthbound, they're heavenbound. I think it's one of the things that is so good to get our heads around is that, when we're born again, we're not earthbound. We're not of the world. We're actually of a heavenly position. Now, really, that's a different Bible study, but that phrase, Jesus has overcome the world. He is the overcomer so that we can overcome. Does he say there'll be no troubles? No, he says in the world that you will have troubles. But even in that, Jesus is the overcomer. Now, what happens here is, as you read on, Jesus shifts now. He's been explaining to the disciples, and now he starts to pray. It says he looks towards heaven and pray. And we're going to pick this up next time, but it says, the Father, the hour has come, glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you. And he's laid out the foundation, disciples. And now he's shifting, and in his prayer, he's opening up the heavenly realm. Again, I think, did they understand at the time? Probably not. But as we read it, we can understand, we can get to grips. This wasn't an act in isolation, but there's a journey that Jesus was going on. Bless you. I'm going to stop there, and I shall pick up chapter 17 next time. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.